At this time, I'm going to be calling on our good friend and colleague, Representative Frank Farry of Bucks County, also chair of our House Ethics. And he is joined by the Bucks County Legislative Delegation. Representative Farry, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today we're here to memorialize someone who is a statesman, quite a leader in Bucks County, and I think amongst my colleagues behind me, they would agree with me, a good friend, and that is Michael Fitzpatrick. Congressman Fitzpatrick served for 10 years as a Bucks County Commissioner, was recognized for his efforts in preserving thousands of acres of open space, as well as the great fiscal work he did running our county. Congressman Fitzpatrick also spent 4 years serving Bucks County, a portion of Northeast Philly, and then ultimately a portion of Montgomery County in the United States Congress. Mike was recognized by numerous groups ranging from veterans organizations to law enforcement groups, too many to even mention, for his efforts in advocating on behalf of the residents of his congressional district. Something that is near and dear to my heart was Mike's efforts advocating for Danny McIntosh's family. A brief synopsis of that story is Danny McIntosh was a paramedic in Bensalem, Pennsylvania, Representative DiGirolamo's former district. And paramedic McIntosh died tragically chasing a suicidal subject. He had a massive heart attack and died on the spot. He left behind a wife and I believe it was 2 daughters. Because paramedic McIntosh was employed by a nonprofit EMS provider, much the same that protect a lot of our communities, and not a municipal employee, he did not receive a federal death benefit. After many, many years of battling, Congressman Fitzpatrick was successful in changing the federal law. So now that the men and women in our EMS providers who are not municipal employees but who die in the line of duty will receive that federal death benefit, and Danny McIntosh's family did ultimately receive that benefit. Mike was known for so many things, as he was eulogized, and then as the numerous speakers spoke after his service at his lunch. There were just so many stories you hear, and I know whenever somebody that is very influential in your community passes, you end up hearing some stories that you wish you knew when they were alive so you could talk to them about it. And the stories were just so overwhelming, but I think one of the most telling aspects of Mike's life was that no matter what the issue was, there was no issue too small. That was a theme that we heard repeated numerous times, whether it was through his funeral mass or, as I said, during the speeches afterwards. I wouldn't be standing here today if it wasn't for Congressman Fitzpatrick. He actually, in between his terms in Congress, had announced he was going to run for this state House seat. He actually called me one afternoon and said, hey, I'm not going to run. I had some things pop up. But I just talked to the Bucks County Courier-Times. I told them you're the best qualified candidate. I asked them to give me 5 minutes, and they're going to be calling you to get your opinion on running for office. Well, here I am 12 years later. So we have a very strong connection. Mike served as my campaign chairman during every one of my elections, and I have to say was a personal friend and a great role model to all of us, no matter what your party is, no matter what your background is. Mike always led from the front and always tried to do what was right. Mike leaves behind his wife, Kathy, 3 daughters, 3 sons, 2 grandchildren, his parents, 7 siblings. And I must say, Mike leaves behind a big hole in the Bucks County community, because I'm sure my Democrat colleagues behind me would agree. It didn't matter what your party was, it mattered about doing what was right. And that's the way Mike lived his life. So, Mr. Speaker, it was great sorrow that our community had to deal with the passing of Congressman Fitzpatrick this past week. He was actually buried with honors at the Washington Crossing National Cemetery, which he was responsible for actually fighting and ultimately having located in Bucks County. He fought for that, and the men and women of our military in our community are much better off by having that cemetery there. And now Mike will be laying with them the men and women that have served our country. So it is with sorrow, Mr. Speaker, that we are here to recognize the passing of Congressman Fitzpatrick. We issue condolences to his family, and I think it's important that we try and keep that legacy, that statesmanship, and that spirit that he so readily displayed. I think it's important that we try and keep that moving forward. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you so much, Representative Farry. Would all members please stand for a moment of silence with us? To the entire Fitzpatrick family, particularly his lovely wife and 6 children and grandchildren, may God bless. You may be seated, and thank you, Representative Farry.